Sweetheart, we just can't miss your sister's engagement. You understand, right? Her voice was soft, almost apologetic, but the laughter in the background made it cruel. I held the phone tighter, my thumb brushing the lace edge of my veil. I could hear clinking glasses, someone shouting for a toast, music swelling behind her. She was smiling through that call. I could hear it. It's just bad timing, Angie. You know how important this is for her. I didn't say a word. The mirror in front of me showed a woman dressed in white, veil trembling from the air vent, lipstick still fresh. I stood in the bridal suite of a rented hall, alone. The two empty chairs in the front row still had ribbons tied around them. One said, Mother of the Bride, the other, Father. I took a slow breath. Mom, I said quietly, I'm getting married today. There was a pause, too long, too real. Oh, honey, don't make me feel guilty. We sent a gift. You'll have a wonderful day. Promise me you won't hold this against us. Then another burst of laughter on her end, distant, carefree. I hung up, not out of anger, just out of something deeper. The kind of silence that comes when your heart finally stops asking why. I set the phone down beside the bouquet, white roses already starting to brown at the edges. I could hear guests outside, someone asking where my parents were. My throat burned, but I forced a small smile. I walked to the window. Outside, sunlight touched the parking lot, bright and distant. That light felt foreign, like something meant for other people's lives. I used to believe that love could fix neglect, that patience could earn attention. But 32 years of being the easy one, the quiet one, had taught me otherwise. My name is Angelina Brooks. I'm an architect, the kind of person who builds homes for others, but never quite found one of her own. I design details for strangers who'll never know my name. Yet today, on what should have been my happiest day, I felt like the invisible daughter again, standing in a room full of proof that even love couldn't make them stay. Sometimes I wonder how many of you ever felt like the forgotten one. Stay with me. This story might sound familiar. I remember the day I told my parents I was getting married. My mother blinked twice before saying, So soon? You sure he's right for you? My father barely looked up from the newspaper. When it came to my sister Melissa, they threw engagement parties, booked photographers, and posted announcements on Facebook. When it came to me, they said, Keep it small, you're not the flashy type. I told myself they just showed love differently. That lie was easy to live with when I was younger. But today, standing in white satin, staring at the empty seats, I couldn't pretend anymore. I picked up the bouquet and walked toward the door. My maid of honor, Jamie, met me halfway. Her smile faltered when she saw my face. They didn't show, did they? She asked softly. I shook my head. They had better plans. Jamie sighed, touching my arm. Angelina, you don't deserve this. I know. My voice was steady, quiet. But they'll remember this day. The ceremony started without them. I walked down the aisle with no hand to hold but my own. Each step echoed louder than the last. The pastor smiled kindly, unaware of the hole in the room. I could feel whispers from guests who noticed the empty chairs. I smiled through it all, my lips trembling just enough to remind me I was still human. When the vows began, my voice didn't shake. It was calm, clear, almost detached. I said the words like I was writing my own blueprint. Strong lines, no cracks. My husband, Mark, looked at me like he could feel something breaking inside, but he didn't know what to do. No one did. After the ceremony, while others danced and drank, I slipped away to the side room again. My phone blinked with a message. It was from Mom. Hope it all went smoothly, sweetheart. Send pictures when you can. I stared at that line until the words blurred. My heart didn't break. It froze. That was the moment I realized they weren't cruel by accident. They were comfortable with forgetting me. That kind of peace and neglect. It's what hurts most. I deleted the message. Then I sat down on one of the empty chairs, still wrapped in my veil, and whispered to myself, You won't forget me next time. The music from outside faded into something distant, almost haunting. I looked at the mirror again. My reflection didn't look broken anymore, just awake. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for an apology that would never come. I traced my finger across the ribbon tied to the chair, then let it fall. The sound of it hitting the floor was soft, final. I knew then that the silence I'd carried for years wasn't weakness. It was fuel. I didn't know what I'd do yet, but I knew I wouldn't be invisible again. The laughter outside grew louder. Someone called my name, asking where I'd gone. I stood, adjusted my veil, and walked back toward the door. My heart felt steady. My voice, when I finally spoke again, sounded like it belonged to someone who'd already made a silent promise, one no one else could hear. Next time they said my name, it wouldn't be out of pity. It would be out of guilt. Your sister just needs more encouragement, Angelina. You've always been the strong one. That's what my mother used to say whenever Rachel cried. I'd stand there, 8 years old, clutching a drawing I made for her birthday, a house with all of us holding hands, while she hung Rachel's report card on the fridge. "Look how proud you make us," she'd say, kissing her cheek. Mine stayed in a drawer, folded neatly, forgotten by dinner. I used to think love had to be earned through silence. If I didn't complain, if I didn't cause trouble, maybe they'd notice me. But the quieter I became, the more invisible I turned. When Rachel broke a glass, it was just an accident. When I did, it was, "You should have been more careful." That pattern became the rhythm of our home. One girl adored for existing, the other useful for keeping peace. My father was kind but distant, always with his paper, his whiskey, his easy sighs. He'd pat my shoulder once in a while, like a manager checking attendance. But Rachel, she was his melody. He'd say, "You got your mother's spark." And I'd watch them laugh together, the sound closing me out of the room. By 12, I learned not to ask questions. Missed birthdays? "We're just so busy, sweetheart." Canceled dinners? "We'll make it up next week." That week never came. They always had plans, something with Rachel's friends, or her choir, or her endless list of important events. One year, I baked my own cake. Chocolate, uneven, too dry. I waited at the table until the frosting softened under the kitchen light. I heard them laughing in the living room, watching Rachel unwrap a new keyboard. I blew out my candles alone. My wish was small, just for someone to remember me. As I grew older, silence became my habit. It was safer to be unnoticed than to face the disappointment of asking. When I got my first job at a small architecture firm, Mom said, "Oh, that's nice. Rachel just got promoted, did you hear?" I smiled and said yes, pretending her success was mine too. That's what good daughters do, right? Years later, when I bought my own apartment, she called it cozy in the same tone you'd use for a charity house tour. I laughed softly and told her I liked the quiet. She said, "Of course you do. You always were the quiet one." She meant it as a compliment. To me, it felt like a tombstone. Even now, I can still see the look she gave me the day Rachel got engaged. Eyes glimmering, voice trembling with pride. She'd called everyone before Rachel even said yes. When it was my turn to announce mine, she just said, "Already? Isn't that quick?" That's when I realized their excitement was reserved, carefully rationed, and I was never on the list. Ethan was sitting beside me then, holding my hand under the table. He's the only one who ever noticed how quiet I became around my family. He once told me, "You don't breathe when you're with them." And he was right. I held my breath through every visit, every dinner, every polite smile. I remember one evening before our wedding planning started. We were sitting on the couch, the house dim, the rain soft against the windows. Ethan said, "You should call them. Maybe invite them early this time." I laughed a little, low and tired. "They'll come if Rachel's free." He frowned. "That doesn't seem fair." "It's always been that way," I said. "I used to think if I became something successful, stable, good, maybe they'd see me. But I think they liked me better when I stayed quiet." He reached for my hand. "Maybe you should stop trying to fit into a story that never had space for you." I looked at him. his eyes kind but puzzled. You don't grow up in a house like mine and just unlearn silence, I said. It becomes part of your skin. That night, I dreamed of our old dining table, the one with a scratch shaped like a lightning bolt running down the middle. Rachel used to sit on the good side. I always sat on the side with the chip. Funny how small things stick. How even wood remembers who mattered more. The next morning, while we were looking over guest lists, Ethan said quietly, "Do you really want them there?" I froze, pen hovering above the paper. For the first time, I didn't know the answer. Wow, still going with that tiny venue? Rachel's voice had that sugary tilt that always sounded like a compliment until you replayed it later. It's cute, Angie. Kind of intimate, lonely, but in a charming way. I smiled the way I always did around her. Tight, polite, practiced. It's simple. That's what I wanted. She shrugged, eyes gliding over the mood board I'd made. Simple's good. You've never been the flashy type. I knew what she meant. Not important enough to notice. Not worth a crowd. Rachel's always been the center of every room she entered. Tall, glossy hair, perfect laugh, the kind of confidence people mistake for warmth. My parents adored her. They called her our star. When I got accepted into architecture school, Mom said, "That's great, honey. Rachel just got her first modeling job." And that was that. When Rachel said she wanted to start a boutique line, Dad emptied a savings account. "She's got real potential," he said, like it was charity work. When I mentioned maybe opening a small design studio years later, he said, "You sure you're ready for that kind of risk?" The truth was never about money. It was faith. They believed in Rachel's dreams. They questioned mine. I remember helping Rachel set up her first store. I painted the walls myself, built her display racks, stayed late gluing price tags while she rehearsed her speech in the mirror. "You don't mind doing the heavy lifting, right?" she'd said, smiling like she was joking. I said, "Of course not," because I'd learned early. Approval always came after effort. When she cut the ribbon on opening day, she didn't mention my name once. Mom hugged her, teary-eyed. "You did this all by yourself, sweetheart." I smiled again, camera flashing, hands full of paint I hadn't washed off properly. Sometimes I think I confused usefulness with love. It took years to realize they weren't the same. Now, months away from my wedding, that old rhythm had found its way back. Rachel took over every conversation. Colors, dresses, food, things she called tasteful, upgrades. I let her talk because fighting her was like yelling through silk. The sound never came back to you. "You're really doing this on a budget?" she'd asked once over lunch, stirring her iced tea. "I'm doing it with intention," I said. She laughed softly. "Right. Minimalism. It's trending now. Good for you." She always found a way to make me feel small while sounding supportive. A lifetime of practice, perfected into charm. Our parents sat beside her that day, nodding along as if she spoke gospel. Dad said, "Your sister's got an eye for presentation, Angie. You should let her help." I looked at him, then at Rachel, who smiled as if she'd already won. "She's already helping," I said quietly. "She's just not aware of it." Rachel tilted her head. "What's that supposed to mean?" I took a sip of water, forcing a small smile. "Just that every comment you make reminds me exactly who I don't want to become." Her smile faltered for half a second, just long enough for me to see it, the edge beneath her gloss. After lunch, I sat alone in my car for a while, fingers gripping the steering wheel. It wasn't anger I felt. It was recognition. Every time Rachel talked, I heard my mother's tone echoing through her. Every dismissal, every sugar-coated critique, inherited cruelty passed down like family silver. It wasn't Rachel's fault entirely. She learned it the same way I did. The difference is, she benefited from it. I survived it. That night, I told Ethan about lunch. He was quiet for a long time before saying, "You don't owe them the version of yourself they prefer." I smiled faintly. "Then why does it still hurt?" "Because you keep hoping they'll notice you." I didn't reply. He was right. Some habits take a lifetime to unlearn. A few days later, my phone buzzed while I was sketching table layouts. It was Rachel. The message was short, casual, effortless in its cruelty. By the way, Mom's changing her flight. Don't plan around them. I stared at it until the screen dimmed, feeling that familiar hollow bloom inside my chest, the one that starts like sadness but ends as quiet fire. The seats are still empty. Jamie whispered it as she fixed my veil, her voice trembling almost as much as my hands. I nodded without looking. The ceremony had already begun. The ocean wind swept through the aisle, soft but sharp, and I could feel everyone's eyes glancing toward the two chairs in the front row, ribbons still perfectly tied, names untouched. I walked slowly, holding my bouquet tight enough to feel the stems bruise. The sky above was soft gray, the kind that looks calm but carries weight. I heard Ethan's breath when he saw me. He smiled, steady, grounding. For a second, I wanted to disappear into that look and forget who wasn't there. The officiant's voice drifted through the wind. My vows came out quiet at first, like I was afraid to break the silence. I promise to stand with you in peace and in storm, I said. My throat closed for a second, but I pushed through. I promise to choose us, even when others don't show up. Ethan squeezed my hand, his thumb tracing the edge of my ring finger. His vows were simple, honest. He didn't need words to make me believe him. The way he looked at me said everything. When the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," the applause was warm, kind, almost too gentle. But behind the clapping, I still felt the hollow space of two missing people. After the ceremony, guests came up one by one. Smiles, photos, congratulations. But I could see the questions in their eyes. "Where are your parents?" someone finally asked. I smiled, the way people do when they were trying to stay graceful. "Busy," I said. "They couldn't make it." It's strange how grief can look like composure when you've practiced it long enough. The reception was small, soft lights, low music, laughter that didn't quite reach me. I remember standing by the ocean railing, the salt air catching my veil as the sky shifted from gold to violet. Ethan came beside me, wrapping his jacket around my shoulders. "They'll regret missing this," he said quietly. I shook my head. "No, regret requires awareness." He studied me for a moment. "You don't have to pretend you're fine." "I'm not pretending," I said. "I'm remembering." He nodded, like he understood without needing more. That's what I loved about him. His silence was never empty. Inside, Rachel's voice replayed in my head from weeks earlier. "It's cute, Angie. Lonely, but cute." I hadn't realized how much truth hid in that word until now. Later that night, after the last guest left, I sat with my phone on the edge of the hotel bed, my dress folded beside me. My notifications glowed. I opened social media, and there it was. My parents smiling, arms around Rachel and her fiancé under golden lights. "Celebrating love tonight," the caption read. The timestamp said 7:14 p.m., the same moment Ethan and I had exchanged vows. My fingers went cold. I stared at the photo, my mother's earrings catching the light, my father's hand on Rachel's shoulder. The comments were filled with hearts and congratulations. Not one mention of me. I didn't cry. I just sat still, breathing through the ache that felt too old to surprise me. There's a kind of pain that doesn't scream anymore. It just sits beside you, familiar, almost polite. Ethan walked in quietly, holding 2 mugs of tea. He saw the screen before I could lock it. "Angelina." "It's fine," I said softly. "You don't have to say it." He put the mug down and sat next to me. "It's not fine." For a long time, neither of us spoke. The room hummed with ocean wind through the window. I kept staring at the photo until the screen dimmed to black, my reflection staring back. Calm, expressionless, done. I whispered, "I'll never give them that power again." Ethan looked at me, his voice low. "What does that mean?" "It means I'm finished waiting for them to see me. From now on, they can look, but they'll see what they lost." He reached for my hand, and I let him hold it, but my mind was somewhere else. Not in the wedding, not in the silence, but in every year I'd spent shrinking just to fit their idea of love. That night, as waves crashed softly beyond the glass, I realized something I'd never said out loud before. Love doesn't disappear when people fail you. It just learns where not to return. When Ethan and I moved to Malibu, the ocean felt like a clean start. Our new home sat on a quiet cliff, waves soft but constant, as if reminding me that peace doesn't always mean silence. I buried myself in work. Designing houses gave me control. Lines, plans, symmetry, things that never betrayed you halfway through. Calls from my parents came rarely, and when they did, they were short. "Just checking in," my mother would say, followed by, "Rachel's been under a lot of stress. You should call her." I always said, "I'll try," knowing I wouldn't. Rachel started visiting once in a while. She'd breeze in wearing oversized sunglasses, talking about her next big collaboration. Though the stories didn't line up anymore. She never asked how I was. Only, "Do you think Dad could invest a little more, just until next quarter?" I'd shrug. "You should ask him." She smirked. "He listens to you more than you think." I wanted to laugh at that. If they ever listened, I wouldn't have spent half my life learning to stay quiet. The truth was, her business, the boutique empire she'd bragged about, was cracking. People whispered about unpaid suppliers, canceled events, rent notices. But when my parents talked about her, their voices stayed proud. "She just needs time," Dad said once, dismissing it like a rumor. "Every success story has rough patches." They never mentioned how many rough patches I'd survived on my own. Meanwhile, my projects started growing. A client referred me to another, then another. I built eco-estates for people who didn't care about names, only results. Word spread quietly, just how I liked it. Ethan noticed the shift before I did. "You work like someone trying to outrun something," he said one night, setting down a glass of wine beside my laptop. I looked up from the screen. "Maybe I am." He leaned against the counter. "And are you winning?" "Sometimes." We smiled at each other, but there was truth in his question I didn't want to touch. Work had become my form of distance, a polite wall no one could accuse me of building. Weeks later, Rachel called again. Her voice was soft, practiced. "Hey, Angie, I was thinking, could you maybe talk to Dad about helping with inventory? I'm short for just a few months." I paused. "Rachel, you got 2 loans last year." She laughed lightly. "You always keep track, don't you?" "I learned to," I said. "Someone in the family has to." There was silence. Then her tone shifted, smooth and cutting. "You sound different lately. Cold." "I'm just done explaining myself." She exhaled. "You really think you're better than us now, don't you?" "No," I said quietly. "I just stopped asking for less." She hung up before I finished the sentence. A week later, my parents called. I could tell from the way Mom's voice trembled that Rachel had complained. "You shouldn't have spoken to her that way," she said. "She's struggling." "So was I replied. "You just never asked." She didn't answer, just that familiar silence, the kind that says everything's been decided long before you were invited to speak. I spent that evening by the water, watching the sun slip under the horizon. The ocean below roared like it had something to say for me. I thought about how distance isn't always measured in miles. Sometimes it's the space between what's fair and what's familiar. Isn't it strange how the people who ignored you always return when they need something? What would you do if that day came? The next morning, I sat in my office reviewing blueprints when my accountant, Trevor, called. He'd been with me since my first project. "Angie, just finished the quarterly," he said, cheerful as ever. "You've done well." I smiled faintly. "Define well," he chuckled. "You're worth about 7 million now, Angie." I stared at the window, the ocean glinting in the distance. 7 million. A number that once felt impossible, now just quiet proof that I'd built something solid without anyone's permission. I thanked him, closed my laptop, and sat still for a long while. The sound of waves outside felt like applause I'd never asked for. "Angie, it's been forever, hasn't it?" Rachel's voice hit like perfume. Sweet, practiced, artificial. I almost didn't recognize the number. I hadn't heard from her in nearly 3 years. I leaned back in my chair, the ocean humming outside my office window. It has, I said, my tone light. I was starting to think you'd moved to another planet. She laughed, a quick fake sound. Oh, come on. You know how life gets. I've just been so busy with the company, with everything. I could hear her smile through the phone, the kind that never reached her eyes. I heard, I said. Last I checked, your company was taking a break. She hesitated for a moment, then brushed it off. Yeah, well, things are turning around. Actually, that's what I wanted to talk to you about. There's this big charity event coming up. Major sponsors, press, the whole thing. I've been asked to co-host, and I thought, what better place than your beautiful Malibu home? My fingers tapped the desk once, quiet, controlled. My home, I repeated softly. She jumped in quickly. It's just one night, you'd barely notice. It'll look great for the family, too. A classy event, all for a good cause. You've got that huge deck overlooking the water. Everyone would be talking about how elegant it was. It could help repair, the image. The family image, I said. Yes, she said brightly. You know how people talk. I looked at the reflection of myself in the glass. Calm face, steady eyes. So you want to borrow my house to make the family look good? Borrow is such a harsh word, she said with a laugh. Think of it as sharing. You always were the generous one. I smiled, though she couldn't see it. Funny. I don't remember being treated that way. She went quiet for half a beat. Then her voice softened, syrup sweet. Angie, that's not fair. Things were complicated back then. They were simple, I said. You took what you wanted, and I stayed quiet. Okay, she said quickly, her tone tightening. Let's not drag up old stuff. I'm trying to do something positive here. You've got this big, beautiful space. It deserves to be seen. Everyone in LA loves that coastal minimalism thing now. You're kind of trendy, you know? That word almost made me laugh. Trendy. Like she was complimenting a piece of furniture. She kept talking, nervous now. It's for charity, Angie. Think of mom and dad. People will see their daughters working together again. That's good press for them. There it was, the real reason. It wasn't about me or even about charity. It was about optics, like always. Our family reputation mattered more than the people in it. Are they coming? I asked quietly. She hesitated, then said, Of course, they'll be thrilled. Mom's been wanting to reconnect. I could almost hear my mother rehearsing her lines, ready to smile for cameras beside the daughter she'd once left waiting at an altar. I looked out at the water, sunlight rippling across the waves. You've thought this all through, haven't you? Rachel's voice brightened again. I knew you'd understand. I'll handle all the planning. You won't have to lift a finger. I pictured it already. Her guests crowding my home, laughter echoing against glass walls, my parents taking credit for everything I'd built. The thought should have stung. Instead, it sparked something else, something colder. She went on, filling the silence. I'll send you the details tonight. We'll make it a family affair. It'll be perfect. I smiled faintly. Perfect, I echoed. For a moment, neither of us spoke. I could tell she was waiting for my answer. Her confidence balanced on the assumption that I'd always give in, that I'd always say yes. Rachel, I said finally, letting her name settle between us like a line drawn in the sand. You really think this will help the family's reputation? I do, she said quickly. It'll be good for all of us. I let a small pause stretch just long enough for her to start doubting herself. Then I said softly but clearly, Of course. Let's make it memorable. She sighed, relieved. I knew you'd say yes. I'll send the invites tonight. You'll see, it'll be amazing. I'm sure it will, I said, and hung up before she could hear the smile in my voice. Outside, the ocean wind pressed against the glass. My reflection in the window didn't look like someone being used again. It looked like someone waiting. I can't believe you're actually letting them use your place, Jamie said, setting down her tablet on the counter. The ocean breeze slipped through the open doors, carrying the faint sound of workers setting up outside. White tents, crystal lights, polished glass. All of it gleamed against the Malibu horizon. I smiled faintly. Letting isn't the word I'd use. She looked at me, confused but curious. So, what word would you use? I turned back to the window, watching a team roll in crates of flowers. Facilitating, I said softly. It sounds polite, doesn't it? Rachel's name had been dropped everywhere. Hosted by Rachel and the Brooks family. Not a single mention of me. I didn't correct it. That was the point. Some truths don't need announcement. They reveal themselves when people get comfortable. I'd chosen every vendor, every photographer, every reporter that would attend. Every name on that guest list passed through me first. Rachel thought she was calling the shots, but she didn't realize I'd been in contact with the event coordinator weeks before she even sent her first email. The Malibu estate looked different that day. Less like a home, more like a quiet stage waiting for its actors to walk in, unaware of the lighting cues. I'd ordered neutral tones everywhere, soft gold lighting, minimalist decor. I wanted nothing flashy. The beauty needed to whisper. When people whisper, they look closer. Jamie scrolled through her tablet, reviewing the schedule. Press coverage confirmed. Guest counts around 200. Should I include your name on the host list this time? I shook my head. Not yet. She hesitated. You sure? It's your property, your team, your money. That's exactly why, I said. They need to believe it's theirs first. Jamie nodded slowly, understanding settling in her expression. She'd worked for me long enough to know I didn't act out of impulse. I waited for moments to ripen, for silence to do what anger never could. Outside, a catering truck backed in. I caught a glimpse of the ocean beyond it, calm and endless. Funny how water looks peaceful even when it's capable of drowning everything around it. Rachel's calls had become constant over the past week. Do you think we can move the seating closer to the terrace? Mom says we should have gold-trimmed menus. Dad's thinking of inviting a few of his contacts. I said yes to everything. The more ownership they felt, the more revealing it would be when the truth surfaced. When she asked if she could post behind-the-scenes clips for promotion, I told her she should absolutely do it. She sent me drafts of captions. So proud to be creating something meaningful for the community. The Brooks legacy continues. Each line tightened something inside me, but I didn't show it. Control isn't silence. It's timing. Jamie returned with a clipboard. Media invites confirmed. Channel 8, The Tribune, and that lifestyle magazine you asked for. Good, I said. Make sure they know the event is sponsored by Brooks Design Group. Her eyebrows lifted. That's your company name. Exactly, I said, keeping my voice even. But don't link it to me personally yet. Let them do their research. For a while, we worked in silence. The sound of hammering outside faded into soft conversation. I could hear the waves breaking faintly below the cliff, rhythmic and steady. Every choice I made had purpose. The seating arrangement, families up front, sponsors near the middle, pressed toward the back, facing the sea. I'd made sure the lighting design focused naturally on the host's table, where Rachel and my parents would sit. I wanted every camera, every phone, every idle eye to capture them clearly. Jamie looked up from her notes. You really want them here, don't you? I want them seen, I said quietly. She didn't ask more. I think she knew it wasn't revenge I was after. It was truth. The kind that doesn't need to be shouted. The kind that stings in daylight. That evening, after everyone left, I walked through the terrace alone. The chandeliers were being tested, their glass prisms scattering soft light across the marble floor. I stood where the guests would stand and pictured how the night would unfold. Laughter, champagne, flattery, and then silence when the right question was asked. The air smelled like jasmine and salt. I ran my fingers along the tablecloth, smooth, cold, perfect. The kind of surface where reflection looks clearer than the person standing above it. Jamie called from the doorway. We just got the last RSVPs in. Want me to send you the final list? Yes, I said, still looking out toward the sea. My phone buzzed a moment later. I scrolled through the list slowly, one name after another. until I saw it. Mr. and Mrs. Brooks. Confirmed. My chest tightened for just a second. Not from pain, but from something sharper. It had been years since they'd come anywhere near something that belonged to me. Now they were walking right into it, smiling. Perfect, I whispered, closing the screen. Let's make sure the view is unforgettable. Welcome, everyone. Isn't this place breathtaking? Rachel's voice carried over the music, smooth and confident. Her champagne glass lifted toward the crowd. People clapped politely, cameras flashing, her practiced smile catching every light. I stood behind one of the terrace pillars, just far enough to watch without being seen. The sea stretched black and endless beyond the glowing edge of the deck. Candles floated in glass bowls across the pool, flickering gold across marble. My home looked like something out of a magazine, or at least, that's how Rachel wanted it to look. She moved gracefully through the guests, introducing herself to donors and reporters as if the house itself had been built for her. We wanted something simple, classic, meaningful, she said, waving a hand toward the ocean view. You know, something that reflects our family values. Our family values. I smiled faintly, the words settling like ice in my chest. I'd heard enough of that growing up. Words that looked perfect on paper but never touched reality. Rachel had always been fluent in presentation. Love wasn't her language. Attention was. For the first hour, I stayed hidden among the staff. My assistant Jamie moved quietly through the crowd, checking on arrangements. She caught my eye once across the room. I nodded. Not yet. The sound of glasses clinking and polite laughter filled the air. My parents sat near the center table, glowing under the soft lights. My mother's pearls gleamed like armor. My father's hand rested proudly over hers. They looked comfortable here, in a world built on appearances. Every now and then, my mother would lean in and whisper something to Rachel, who'd toss her head back and laugh just loud enough for people to notice. The picture-perfect trio. And not one of them seemed to remember who paid for every inch of the floor they were standing on. I let them enjoy it. For a moment, I even felt strangely calm. Watching them parade through my space, I realized something I hadn't before. I didn't feel jealous anymore. I just felt done. Done being invisible. Done handing them grace they never earned. When the speeches began, I stepped away from the shadows. My heels clicked softly against the marble, blending with the rhythm of the music until I reached the edge of the terrace. The crowd shifted slightly, people turning their heads. Rachel was mid-sentence. This night represents everything my family stands for. Strength, unity, and... Her words caught when she saw me. I smiled. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to welcome everyone properly. A few guests turned fully toward me, uncertain. Rachel blinked, her perfect poise flickering for half a second. Oh, Angie, I didn't know you were here. I live here, I said quietly, but clearly. A soft ripple moved through the crowd. Someone whispered, "She owns this place?" Rachel laughed awkwardly. "She's joking, it's a family property, really. I met..." Her eyes. "No, it's mine. I designed it, I built it. Every guest here is standing in a home you asked to borrow." The laughter died instantly. Silence rolled through the room like a slow wave. My mother's hand froze midair, her glass trembling slightly. My father looked down, as if hoping to disappear into the linen napkin. Rachel's smile cracked just enough for the truth to show. Her voice came out smaller than I'd ever heard it. "Wait, this is your house?" "Yes," I said softly, letting the silence stretch just long enough for every whisper to fade. "This is my house." Dozens of faces turned toward me. I could feel the weight of every gaze, the confusion, the curiosity, the slow unraveling of their perfect little illusion. Rachel's lips parted, but no sound came out. My parents sat frozen, their smiles stiff like painted porcelain. I stepped forward, my heels steady on the marble. I built this place 8 years ago. Every beam, every wall, every inch was drawn from scratch. I poured my savings, my time, and most of my hope into it. I paused, glancing toward the sea, back when the rest of the family was too busy celebrating someone else's milestones. A quiet murmur rippled through the crowd. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Rachel tried to laugh it off. Oh, come on, Angie, you're exaggerating. You make it sound like. Like what? I asked calmly. Like you didn't call it yours 20 minutes ago? Or like mom didn't tell everyone she chose the design? My words hung there, not sharp, just clear. Rachel blinked rapidly, searching for an escape. I turned to the guests, smiling faintly. But she's right about one thing. It is beautiful. I wanted it to be a place where truth has no walls to hide behind. Maybe that's why the windows are so wide. A few people exchanged glances. Someone coughed. I could feel the tension rise, but my heart stayed still. I'd waited years for this kind of stillness, the kind that feels like control. I remember, I continued, when I told my family I wanted to design eco homes. My father said it was unrealistic. My mother said it was cute. Rachel said I'd outgrow it. I smiled at her now, kind but distant. I didn't. Rachel's face tightened. My mother's hand fluttered toward her glass, but didn't lift it. My father's jaw clenched. I want to thank my sister, though, I said lightly. If she hadn't called about this event, I might never have opened these doors again. So really, Rachel, thank you for bringing everyone together tonight. There was a soft gasp from somewhere near the back. Rachel looked as though she wanted to speak, but her throat betrayed her. I could see it in her eyes, the slow collapse of entitlement, the dawning awareness that this wasn't her audience anymore. I've learned something tonight, I said. Silence doesn't mean weakness. It just means I was building while everyone else was talking. I let that line rest, the air thick and motionless around it. My mother's eyes began to glisten, tears welling despite herself. My father turned his face away, staring somewhere distant, maybe at the ocean, maybe at his own reflection. And for a moment, I felt almost sorry for them. Almost. Would you have stayed silent? Or would you have stood where I did, smiling through it? By morning, my phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Mentions, tags, private messages, strangers posting clips from the night before, little snippets of faces freezing mid-smile when I said the words, "This is my house." The caption trending under it read, "Family exposed at charity gala." I didn't open any of the videos. I didn't need to. I'd lived it in real time. Rachel called first. I let it ring, then again. The third time, I answered. Her voice came fast, sharp, shaking under the weight of fake control. Do you realize what you did to me? To Mom and Dad? Everyone's talking about it. I sat by the window, coffee in hand, watching sunlight creep across the marble floor. I didn't do anything, Rachel. I just told the truth. You humiliated us, she snapped. Do you even understand how bad this looks? It looks honest, I said. That's new for this family. She went quiet for a second, probably realizing that nothing she said would sting anymore. You're unbelievable, she hissed before hanging up. I stared at the blank screen for a while, then turned my phone face down. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt finished. The kind of calm that comes when you've already cried all the tears there were to cry years ago. An hour later, my parents showed up in a flurry of expensive perfume and anger. My mother didn't even sit. You went too far, Angelina. That was a family event. Family? I asked quietly. You mean the same family that skipped my wedding to attend Rachel's engagement party? Her eyes darted away. My father stepped in, his tone clipped. You owe your sister an apology. That stunt you pulled wasn't a stunt, I cut in. It was ownership. Of my home, of my voice. He sighed, the kind that used to silence me as a child. You've always been dramatic. I smiled faintly. No, I just stopped letting you narrate me. He didn't answer. Neither did she. They just exchanged a look that told me I'd stepped outside the version of me they could control. After they left, the silence felt lighter than it ever had. I walked through the house slowly, running my hand along the walls. Every corner felt earned now. Not in revenge, but in clarity. Ethan found me in the courtyard later, pruning one of the small olive trees we'd planted last spring. So, he said with that half grin of his, How's the internet treating you? I laughed softly. I think Rachel's PR team is doing damage control. He nodded. Figures, but don't let them rewrite it. I met his eyes. They already did, years ago. He set the shears down and leaned against the railing. You know what I kept thinking last night? They wrote you out long before you spoke up. I looked at him, the truth of it landing deeper than any insult ever could. Yeah, I said. They did. He smiled gently. Then maybe you just wrote yourself back in. For the first time, I didn't argue. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the cliffs, I scrolled through one last notification. A news outlet headline that read, Architect outs family at charity event. Grace or revenge? I didn't click. The world could debate it however it wanted. I knew what it really was. Closure. Just as I set my phone down, it buzzed again. Unknown number. I almost ignored it until I saw the text preview. This is Charles Brandt, your father's attorney. Call me when you can. It concerns the family estate. I stared at the screen, feeling that familiar mix of disbelief and inevitability tighten in my chest. It seemed the story wasn't done yet. The call came just after noon. The lawyer's voice was careful, every word wrapped in politeness. Your father requested a meeting, he said. It concerns the family estate. I agreed, though I already knew what that meant. There's a certain tone people use when they're about to tell you something they know you won't like. The kind of tone that smells like guilt. When I walked into the office, my father was already there, sitting straight in his chair, eyes fixed on the window instead of me. Rachel sat beside him, phone in hand, pretending to scroll but clearly waiting for a fight. Angelina, my father said, his voice clipped. I made a few adjustments after the incident. Adjustments? I asked, though I already knew. He cleared his throat. Given the unwanted attention from that night, I transferred certain assets to Rachel's name, temporarily, just until things settle. Rachel smiled, small and smug. It's for protection, Angie. Family protection. I looked at them both, quiet for a moment. I could almost laugh at the word family. So you moved everything to her because I embarrassed you. My father straightened. Because you made our name a spectacle. And what did you make it? I asked softly. When you erased your own daughter from it? He looked down. Rachel didn't. She leaned forward. You'll understand when you calm down. You've always been sensitive. I almost smiled. Sensitive, I repeated. That's what you call 30 years of silence? I set a folder on the desk, sliding it toward them. Here's something you might find interesting. My accountant compiled everything last quarter. Every investment, every holding, none of it's tied to the family accounts, all of it's mine. Rachel frowned. So what? You think that gives you leverage? No, I said, calmly. It gives me freedom. I watched the realization spread, that there was nothing left they could take from me, nothing left to use as punishment. My father exhaled slowly, his pride shrinking in the silence. You've become cold, he muttered. No, I said, standing. I've become clear. Rachel's voice rose behind me, cracking for the first time. You'll regret this. I turned just enough to meet her eyes. I already did, I said quietly. For 30 years. The first article appeared 3 days later. I wasn't tagged, but the photo was from my front lawn. The night Rachel smiled for the cameras, pretending everything in sight belonged to her. The headline read, Charity Star Under Investigation for Misused Investor Funds. I remember staring at the screen, feeling nothing. No thrill, no shock, not even satisfaction. Just the quiet confirmation that truth has a way of surfacing when left alone. Calls started coming in again, this time not for me. Reporters wanted comments from Rachel's company. Her assistant leaked statements, then deleted them. People who once praised her for her vision were suddenly remembering late payments and missing receipts. Ethan glanced up from his phone that morning and said, You didn't say a word, did you? I shook my head. Didn't have to. He smiled faintly. You let gravity do its job. That made me laugh. It sounded cruel when he said it. But to me, it felt like mercy. I'd carried the weight for so long. The silence, the invisibility, the family games. And now the balance was simply finding its center. By the end of the week, Rachel's investors were demanding answers. Old emails resurfaced, screenshots, bank transfers that didn't match. Every piece fit together on its own, like dominoes falling in order. She called once, late at night. Her voice was hoarse. "You did this, didn't you?" I let the question hang for a moment. "No, Rachel," I said softly. "You did." There was no shouting this time, no blaming, just a long breath, like she finally realized how heavy her own lies had become. When the news spread wider, talk shows, social media, even a local TV segment, I didn't hide or gloat. I went for a walk by the ocean. The wind was calm, and for the first time in years, I felt it on my skin without tension, without dread. People kept saying it was karma, but it wasn't. It was truth, patient and inevitable. I didn't destroy her reputation. I just stopped protecting it. And when I saw the final headline, "Rachel Holloway resigns amid investigation," I turned off my phone and watched the tide roll in. It wasn't revenge anymore. It was balance. The envelope was cream-colored, heavy, and familiar. My mother's handwriting, careful as always, curved across the front. "To my daughter, Angelina." No return address, no date, just that one line, written like it meant something. I stared at it for a long time before touching it. The house was quiet, sunlight spilling across the counter where I'd set it down. For a moment, I thought about just throwing it away, but my hands betrayed me. I slid a finger under the seal, slow, deliberate, as if the pace could soften whatever waited inside. The first words hit like a whisper. "I'm sorry." She wrote that she'd watched everything unravel, the news, the humiliation, the silence that followed. She said she'd wanted to call, but shame had kept her still. She said my father hadn't slept since the night of the gala, and Rachel was struggling to keep her head above water. Then came the line that caught my breath. "We chose the child who needed more attention." I read it twice. Needed more attention. That's how she described 30 years of preference, exclusion, and quiet erasure. Attention. The word rolled around in my mind, too small for the weight it carried. She wrote that they thought Rachel's fragility required protecting, that I'd always seemed strong enough to stand alone, that I didn't need them the way she did. I set the letter down halfway through, leaning back in my chair. The air smelled faintly of jasmine from the garden, the same scent that used to drift through my bedroom window when I was a child. I could almost hear her voice back then, telling me not to make a scene, not to be difficult, not to expect too much. I picked the letter up again. She said she'd seen the look on my face at the gala and realized, too late, that I'd stopped looking for her approval. "You reminded me of your grandmother that night," she wrote. Strong, but unreachable. Unreachable. The word didn't sting. It settled instead. Quiet and even. She was right. Somewhere along the way, I had stopped waiting for someone to meet me halfway. She ended with, "Please know, I loved you differently, not less." I folded the letter carefully, running my fingers over the creases. I could feel the tremble in her handwriting, the tiny dips where emotion had made her hand falter. For a second, I let myself feel what she must have felt writing it: regret, confusion, the ache of time wasted. But I didn't feel anger. Not anymore. Only distance, like standing on opposite sides of a river too wide to cross. Ethan came in from the garden, dirt on his hands, the smell of rosemary following him. "You okay?" he asked quietly. I nodded. "It's from my mother." He looked at the folded paper in my hand. "You gonna answer?" I shook my head. "No, there's nothing left to explain." He didn't press. He never did. He just wiped his hands on his jeans and said, "Sometimes silence says everything." I smiled faintly. Maybe that's all she ever needed to hear. When he left, I sat there for a long time, the folded letter warm against my palm. I thought about all the times I'd begged for her attention without words: good grades, quiet obedience, measured smiles. I thought about how invisible love can become when you keep trying to earn it. The clock ticked in the background, steady and unbothered. I stood, walked to the mantel, and set the letter there beside the framed photo of my grandparents. The sunlight caught the edge of the paper, making it glow for a moment before fading. I didn't need to burn it. I didn't need to keep it either. It was enough to let it sit. A confession frozen in time, written too late, but still human. For the first time in years, I felt peace without explanation. I folded the letter quietly, leaving it unopened on the mantel. The evening light spilled across the lawn, warm and forgiving. The house no longer felt heavy. I could hear soft laughter drifting from the patio. Ethan flipping burgers, Marie pouring wine, Liam tuning his old guitar. Real laughter, not the kind that hides judgment. When I bought this place, it had felt like armor. Now, it felt like breath. The walls that once held silence now echoed with conversation and small jokes that meant nothing but somehow meant everything. Marie leaned over and said, "You've finally got that look, like someone who stopped waiting for the storm." I smiled. "Maybe the storm just ran out of places to go." She laughed. "Or maybe you built something stronger than the rain." Her words sat with me. For years, I built everything to survive, not to enjoy, not to rest. Tonight was the first time I looked around and saw life instead of proof. The string lights swayed, casting soft gold over everyone's faces. Ethan caught my eye across the table. His smile was quiet, steady. When the night grew cooler, we moved closer to the fire pit. Someone passed me a blanket. Liam strummed an old tune and sang off key on purpose, just to make us laugh. I leaned back and let the sound wrap around me. Ethan handed me a cup of coffee. "Feels different here now," he said. "It's lighter," I answered. "It used to echo. Now it listens." He nodded. "You earned this peace, you know." "I didn't earn it," I said softly. "I just stopped chasing what hurt." The truth was, peace didn't arrive with fanfare. It came quietly, in the absence of noise, in mornings where I could drink coffee without replaying old arguments, in evenings where laughter replaced defense. I walked inside later, gathering a few empty glasses, the faint hum of conversations still drifting from outside. For a moment, I looked around the living room, the art on the walls, the worn rug, the photo of my grandparents by the window. Everything was exactly where it belonged. There was no bitterness left, just the steady rhythm of contentment. I thought about how strange it was. The same place that once symbolized survival now felt like home. Then my phone buzzed on the counter. One missed call, a voicemail. The name on the screen made my stomach tighten for just a second. "Rachel." I pressed play without moving. Her voice came through, shaky, broken between breaths. "Angie, I don't know where else to go. Please, I just need you to listen." Then silence. I stood there for a long time, the sound of waves faint beyond the open window, her voice still echoing in the room that finally felt whole. Her voice played through the phone, trembling, uneven. "Angie, please, I don't know where else to go. I never meant for things to—" The message broke off with a sob, then silence. Just breathing, jagged and shallow, like someone trying to hold on to the last thread of control. Then a click. I stood there, the phone still in my hand, staring at the screen long after it went dark. For a while, I didn't move. I could feel the faint hum of the refrigerator, the distant echo of waves outside, and the sound of my own heartbeat settling into something steady. Rachel crying used to unravel me. Every time she broke down, I'd step in. I'd fix it. I'd swallow my own hurt because someone had to stay calm. That pattern was our language for years, her chaos, my silence. But not tonight. I walked to the window. The moonlight stretched across the water, soft and silver. Ethan was asleep upstairs, the kind of deep sleep that only comes when you've stopped waiting for something to go wrong. I envied that peace once. Now I had it. I pressed play again, listening to her words one more time. I just need you to listen. That line stayed with me. Not forgive me, not help me, just listen. Maybe she didn't even know what she was asking for. Maybe she just wanted to hear her own guilt out loud. I thought about calling her back. I even unlocked my phone, thumb hovering over her number. But what would I say? It's okay? It wasn't. It never really would be. But I'd made peace with that. People think forgiveness is a door you open for someone else. It's not. It's the moment you stop waiting for an apology. I didn't forgive Rachel for her sake. I forgave her because I wanted my life back. I stepped outside, barefoot on the cool stone patio. The air smelled of salt and night jasmine. The ocean was calm, its rhythm patient and endless. I leaned against the railing, watching the waves catch the light. For a long time, I just stood there, breathing in the quiet. I remembered being kids, Rachel running ahead, me carrying both our backpacks because she said hers was too heavy. I remembered the way our mother would look at her, soft and worried, while I stood just a few feet away, pretending I didn't notice. I used to think love was something you earned by being useful. Now I know it's something you choose not to chase. The phone buzzed once more in my hand, another voicemail alert. But I didn't check it. The night didn't need her voice again. Ethan's laugh drifted faintly from the house. He must have turned in his sleep, muttering something to himself. It grounded me. This life, this quiet, this freedom, I had built it. I wasn't going to trade it for an old Aka pretending to be redemption. The waves pulled back, rolled forward again, steady as breathing. I felt the tension leave my shoulders. I whispered into the wind, almost without meaning to. I hope she finds what she was chasing. The ocean answered with nothing but calm. For a long time, I thought revenge was the moment people finally saw what they'd done to you. I thought it would come loud, in confrontations, in gasps, in apologies whispered too late. But it doesn't. Revenge isn't noise. It's peace. It's waking up one day and realizing their absence doesn't sting anymore. The house is quiet now, but it's not empty. It breathes. The ocean hums through the windows like a low song, constant and steady. There are no raised voices, no judgment in the walls, just air that belongs to me. Sometimes I catch myself standing by the window with a cup of coffee, thinking about how much of my life I spent trying to prove I was enough, trying to make them proud, trying to keep peace that was never real. I used to believe silence meant defeat. Now I know it can mean freedom. People say time heals. It doesn't. It just teaches you what to stop touching. I stopped reaching for people who looked at me like I was an inconvenience. I stopped defending myself to those who were never listening. I stopped asking for love that came with a price tag. Ethan asked me once, "Do you miss them?" I told him, "I miss the version of them I kept inventing." He didn't say anything after that. He didn't need to. Some truths just hang there, understood without comfort. There's something peaceful about living without the need to be understood. I think that's the real kind of closure. Not the apology, not the explanation, but the quiet acceptance that you made it out whole. I learned that strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just whispers, enough. Sometimes it's sitting alone at a dinner table and realizing you don't feel lonely anymore. Sometimes it's knowing you don't have to explain why you walked away. I think about Rachel sometimes, about how hard she tried to be adored, about how much of her worth depended on people watching. I used to envy that confidence. Now, I just hope she finds something real beneath it all, something that doesn't vanish when the applause fades. Forgiveness, I've learned, doesn't mean letting them back in. It means you stop carrying them with you. It means the memories stop burning and just sit there, soft-edged, like old photographs that no longer hurt to look at. My mother once told me, "You've always been too quiet for this family." She said it like an insult, Maybe it was, but quiet people see everything. We learn to survive without needing to be seen. We learn to build worlds in the spaces others leave empty. If you've ever been the quiet one in your family, I hope my story reminds you, peace is its own kind of revenge. And if it did, stay with me. I have more stories. Like this, for hearts that still remember. They missed my wedding. I missed their approval. I think we're even now.